Okay, so today is going to be a different video. It truly is a different style video. I don't typically make gaming video, but today is going to be my review of the amazing Sony PlayStation 5. And it's just so crazy to me that as of the shooting of this video, you can't just get up, go to the store, and buy a PlayStation. It's crazy to me. But why don't we go ahead and jump into the review. Let's start off with this controller here. I want to cover this controller before I go over, the game that I got, which was actually when I bought mine, I picked up, Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is of course the sequel of what you had on the PlayStation 4. But as I said, as part of the review, I want to talk about this next generation controller, and I'm really measuring my words here. This is a next generation controller. Now, I'm not a gamer, but I still think even real gamers, people who just play games all day, respect what this controller has to offer. Many of those hardcore gamers actually praise this controller as one that just doesn't have its match out there. Nothing comes close to this level. Now, you may have heard of haptics in general, and haptic feedback on here is something you really just need to experience. I can't even begin to explain to you what haptic feedback, what it does to user experience when you're playing and when you're holding this controller. It is just an awesome feeling. The way every single thing has its own level of feedback, it's just unbelievable. Anywhere from just simple runs to walking on a piece of paper versus walking on like grass or wood or sand is just something else. It adapts every time, and it gives you a different feeling depending on the virtual object or how hard you land or something, or how hard you hit something, and of course depending on the side the object is on. So if you're doing something in a game or you're interacting with like an object in that virtual world, that's on the right hand side, the feedback you get depending on the pressure, you get all of that depending on how hard you press. The technology that goes into just these two, the R2 and the L2 buttons, just top level. But anyway, so the feedback is so real. It's so, it's intense when it needs to be intense. And it's as if you can actually almost feel like just different texture. I mean, Sony just won this battle for me, just hands down. And as I mentioned with the L2 and R2 button or triggers here, so let's just call them what everybody calls them. So with these triggers, the L2 and R2, they have some level of resistance in them. Now, I can't break down the technology because it would just make this video way too long, but you can feel the difference when you press and release the button, depending on the type of interaction you're having there, depending on how the developers set the resistance level on whether a catapult or a gun or whatever the case may be. It's just ridiculous how you can measure how much you press or how much you throw something in the game based off of how much you actually pressed those triggers and how fast you release them. It's amazing. By the way, if you are visiting for the first time, well, welcome to the channel. Of course, I'm certainly hoping that you are enjoying the content so far. And if you are, I truly appreciate that. Please do me a huge favor. Hit both the like and the subscribe button. That's a tremendous boost to this channel. And again, I truly appreciate that. All right, so let's go ahead and get back to this PlayStation 5 here. When you get in the game, of course, the user interface is different when compared to that of the PlayStation 4. It does take a little bit of getting used to because it's really, as I mentioned, different. So you just have to kind of go around and figure out where things are. And I personally think that it's a really nice look here. Navigating through here is very, very smooth. Plus, the console itself is very, very fast. It's super snappy when navigating through it, going to the PlayStation Store and all of the other apps. Also, the games actually do seem to load faster on here when compared to the previous model. Obviously, you have a faster storage on here with better specs compared to the PlayStation 4. The one thing that I'm unable to do here, at least I'm not able to do it as easily as I used to be on the PlayStation 4, which also is the case for many people who own the PlayStation 5, is accessing just a web browser. It's not as, just going on the web browser and accessing. Now you have to find, there's a creative way or just like a very twisted path that you have to go about in order to get it. It's like they're not really wanting you to use a browser. And even when you are able to access the web browser by going through that creative way and going through the back end, that web browser is still fairly limited. Now, going back to the games themselves, of course, the graphics are just top notch, man. It's just plain amazing. It truly is next generation gaming. Now, you might not be as impressed as most people who buy this console and play, probably because you've played on a very souped up computer. You know, you've built a computer that can actually push out, you know, graphics that match this or that are better than this. But what the PlayStation 5 can do, especially for a console, it's just epic, man. Now, again, a lot of hardcore, high specs PC gamers, you know, have really given respect to this generation of the PlayStation. Now, you may or may not be familiar with what ray tracing is, but you know, for those of you who don't know, essentially ray tracing is the ability of your device, depending if it's loaded with the specs to do so, the ability to simulate the real life behavior or the real life effects of light and how it interacts with objects. And in this case, it will be doing so in the game, like on the virtual objects found in that game. So it takes gaming just to another level of realism, right? You can actually toggle it either on or off in the game, and it would be essentially at 4K with 30 frames per second, or you could just have it completely off and run your game at 60 frames per second. Now, let's talk about the console itself. As you can see on the back here, it is gigantic, way bigger and taller than what the previous model was. My PlayStation 3 is only able to match it in terms of maybe height. Anyway, so it's a very tall console, and depending on your setup, you may have to create more space for this guy here. Now, I do like the design. The model that I went for here is the disc model. The digital model was just super rare when I was going for it. So I personally actually prefer having physical games, right, as opposed to just digital games. I mean, call me weird, but you know, this model actually works for me because it's the disc version. Now, the shell on the sides are kind of a matte white, just based off of that texture, and in the middle here between the shells, you have kind of a glossy black strip, and this is where you find the USB type A and also the USB type C. So you'll be able to plug in your PlayStation controller here. When the console itself is on, as you can see, there is a blue light with a consistent glow here. It looks really cool. Now, I do know that the whole thing is pretty subjective in terms of the design and the looks of it, but I personally think that it's a very, very cool design. It's way bigger than I thought. You know, I really didn't picture it being this big and this tall, but I've gotten used to it. But if you were to buy one, you would see what I mean. Once you carry and you open that box, it's like a house. It does come with the accessory that you need in order to play, along with a stand that you can actually mount on the console. And of course, you don't have to, but you should, because that would be one of the ways to help with just like airflow. The stand would have to be screwed at the bottom, and with the whole concept of, you know, working with air, the way that stand is built is really going to allow for better airflow, and it's not really something that's going to take long for you to mount on the console. It's relatively quick. It's a quick setup and done, and then you're ready to enjoy your PlayStation, assuming of course you're not going to be moving it a lot. But anyway, that was just my delayed review of the, I'm going to call it the infamous PlayStation 5, right? Just because you just can't buy it. You know, lots of kids out there upset at their parents because they can't get their hands. It's really, really hard. Although now they are coming a little bit, it's a little bit, it's not as hard as it used to, but you still can't go to the store and just pick up one, at least as of the shooting of this video here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this was informative. Don't forget, of course, to like, comment. I'm going to catch you in the comment section. I always do. I'm also going to catch you in the next video. And up until that next video, of course, as always, stay safe out there.